Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and today we're back with another build guide video. I'll teach you how to play Xueyi. Is she even worth building at all? And what is her unique things that I wanted to share with you about? This video is going to cover all of them. But first things first, let's understand what exactly she does, which makes her so special in Honkai Star Rail. What better way to do it than to fight an enemy like Phantalia? So I'm just going to go ahead and buff Xueyi here. The first thing I want you to know is her ultimate ability. If you notice, Phantalia is not weak to quantum at all. But her ultimate ability here actually tells you that you are able to ignore enemy toughness breaking. So regardless of what the enemy element is, she deals damage to it. This is very good because regardless of what the memory of chaos meta is, she will always find a place in whatever team that you have. We'll explain more in a little bit what other things is done. But as you can see here, just a lot of break effect, a lot of ultimate damage increase based on the enemy toughness, some damage buffing based on variances as well. But let's go ahead and see some animations and we'll talk more about her kit. Okay, so as we see here, there are some stacks also below her face over here in the icon, 4/6. This has to do with her talent ability, and it's quite important because this forms a very big part of her kit. That out of 6 is her E6. Without her E6 is max stacks of 8, as we can see here, up to 8 stacks. Whenever she does toughness to the enemy weaknesses, or her teammates do toughness breaking to the enemy, she gains 1 stack of this karma, which is the number /8 that we see over there. And once she reaches max stack, she does a follow-up attack to an enemy that deals damage, quantum damage, based on her amount of attack. Of course, with E2, once you have E2, this follow-up attack also ignores the enemy weaknesses, which is very, very insane. She becomes a very good colorless breaker. Colorless meaning regardless of what enemy weaknesses, element weakness the enemy has, she will always do something. And she also restores a bit of HP with her E2. We'll talk more about Eidolons in a little bit, but that's some of the changes that you will see here compared to a base E0 Xueyi that I want you to take note of as well. So, for example, Lota here, if I hit one of these guys, you will see this number going up to 5. Let's smack this flower here. So as you can see, it becomes 5. And now, for example, if I hit with her, none of them are weak to quantum, so she doesn't get the max stacks. And I'll just show you real quick. And here, it will be an example of a teammate. If I use Blade's ability here, she has 5 out of 6 stacks, and if he hits all 3, she will actually gain a surplus of stacks because you just need 1, but because there's additional 2, she gains more stacks and you will see it carry over to her next cycle of stacks. Let me just show you real quick. So she does her follow-up attack here. So very solid. Let me just continue breaking them like this. Continue buffing her. So as you can see, she does a lot of weakness breaking regardless of what enemy composition you're in. She will always be slightly relevant in the team composition, even though they have no weaknesses at all here. So a super strong character that does a lot on field, even though the enemy typing is unfavorable for her, as we see over here too. So let me just go back in the screen here. So we talked about her skill. It's hitting one target in the center and the side is quantum damage. The basic attack and skill is mainly, it's not really she doesn't do any colorless damage in these two, so she actually could be quite skill point positive if you're playing into matches unfavorable for her element. If you're playing in a quantum weak enemy, she will likely use a lot more skill than normal, so she's flexible in that sense, because with her E2 at least you have a lot of colorless damage coming from her ultimate ability, coming from her talent follow-up ability, and her talent follow-up also does heal her a bit with her E2 as well. So very, very strong character. Now we've seen enough of her overall kit, now let's talk about some builds that I want to highlight for this unit too. Let's start off first with an easy one, shall we? Let's talk about Relics and what I think is strong for her. There are 2 main ways to play Xueyi. But the first one I want to talk about is going to be super generic that any of you will be easy to assimilate into, and that is the Genius of Brilliant Star 4-piece build. Very strong because she does quantum damage. Even though it's colorless breaking on the enemy weaknesses, the output is still quantum based, which means that she benefits very well for Genius of Brilliant Stars. 10% quantum damage, 10% defense ignore, which is super, super good. Of course, the additional 10% is nice if the enemy has quantum weakness. For example, maybe you're playing into favorable matchups for her, or maybe you're playing with Silver Wolf to drop in the quantum weakness. All of those are quite positive for her since she's mostly single target in nature with just a little bit of splash here and there. 4-piece Genius of Brilliant Stars is probably my go-to pick. And of course, for the 2-piece here, I think out of all of them, my favorite is Inert Salsoto, because her follow-up attack from her talent once you reach the max stacks is here as well, and she does a lot of damage based on her ultimate. Her skill and basic attack are like so you don't really need Rutland Arena here. I much prefer Inert Salsoto for this additional 15% for both of the things that matter for her overall kit. Crit rate is also very solid for her because she is a character that wants to do damage on an instance, so she wants to crit big numbers as well. That is the first major part of playing her, and the main stats that you look for the Link Rope here, I think you can go for Energy Restoration Rate if you're planning to play her as more of a Toughness Breaker. If you don't care about Toughness Breaking too much, you want to just do instances of damage a lot, maybe the enemy are very weak to Quantum, she's like a typical main DPS, you want to go for attack percentage here for the Link Rope. So that is the difference. If a sub DPS, Energy Restoration Rate, if a main DPS, attack percentage, depending on what you prefer. Planisphere, of course, I think quantum damage is going to be universal for this character, not really much deviation there. For Genius or Brilliant Star, you want to go for crit rate or crit damage for the body. Most of the time, I think it'll be crit rate, depending on what is your light cones that you're using, whether you have a lot of crit rate there. Just try to balance the ratios into a roughly 1:2 ratio for her, since she doesn't get too much crit rate, crit damage from her other tracers and effects. For the feat, I likely want to go for speed. Allows her to hit more often, dealing more damage means that she can get more energy back too, which helps her activate her colorless breaking a bit more. I would prefer a bit more speed for this particular character. That is the first aspect. The second aspect for this unit is actually a break effect build, which would revolve around Thief of Shooting Meteor. Especially if she's no longer like a main DPS, another fancy way of building her is actually building her break effect, and that is when you can consider going for a 4-piece Thief of Shooting Meteor for that 32% break effect. If especially you are playing her into regardless of what teams, you want to build her for energy restoration, for example like Panacony Land of Dreams, 5% energy restoration just purely as a break effect kind of build, or even maybe Talia Kingdom of Banditry for that quantum break effect. I think she scales well into these ones as well, since she can hit any element on the enemy, means that break effect is always valuable on this character, especially with her E2. So 4-piece, 2-piece Talia of Kingdom Banditry, and 4-piece Thief of Shooting Meteor if you're playing that route of break effect. In that case, I'll go for crit body, I'll go for speed boots for the 4-piece, but here I might tend towards a break effect or energy restoration rate, depending on what you have better stats on the crit rate and crit damage subs, but more often than not, I think I'll prefer energy restoration rate because break effect can be found from like subs. And Panacony Land of Dreams is also good to change her more into like a sub DPS supportive kind of role, but also targeting enemies' weaknesses very, very well. So those are some options. I give you 2: main DPS, sub DPS, and a bit more break effect as well, in case any of you want a variety of ways to play this particular unit. Now let's go into light cones, which we'll talk about now. Now I'm going to just give you a TLDR for all the light cones that we have. I think On the Fall of Aeon is a very, very good balance for a character, for example, like Xueyi. The reason is because it's firstly free to play, you can get it all the way to Super Imposition 5, giving her most of the stats she needs, like HP attack is of a very high scaling compared to other 4-star light cones. But on top of that, she's a character that breaks enemies' weaknesses quite easily because of her colorless breaking ability, attacking any weakness that the enemy has with her follow-up at E2 and ultimate ability regardless of enemy weaknesses, meaning that she is actually one of the best characters in the game of Destruction class, able to achieve this when the wearer inflicts weakness break on the enemy. This makes it much more efficient to put this light cone on her compared to any other character that you have in the game, which is why I think this is probably a pretty good candidate. Giving her attack percentage, damage bonuses, she doesn't really have too much attack percentage in her kit, and she could do with other stuff, like her Link Rope can go with energy restoration rate, she can go for example with break effect, which benefit her a little bit more. That is why I think this is super good, because you stack this 16% 4 times to get 64% attack bonuses, which is pretty much a Link Rope in my opinion as well. So very, very good stat distribution from On the Fall of an Aeon. For any of you who are making your way there, I think other options that are more general is a Secret Vow, especially if you have high Eidolons or Super Impositions here, because 40% damage increase is decent as well, and you might not always be under 50% hit or lesser than the enemy's HP, especially because she has a self-sustaining mechanic at E2. meaning that you likely more of the time get this only 40%. But still, you can always level this up if you're a newer player. If you have this is very useful for a lot of other characters. For example, like Blade. For example, if you play Ireland also, these are generally quite useful because 40% damage dealt at Super Imposition 5 is very, very high. So I would say on the 4th Aeon, a Secret Vow is also pretty efficient for a team-wide account, considering it. And any of you whales who maybe put the Battle Pass, some of you might be thinking, how about Nowhere to Run? Is this very, very good as well? In my opinion, I think this is okay to have. It plays into her style where if she defeats an enemy, she heals. But it really requires her to actually kill targets. So I would say this is mostly for the attack 24%, which compared to on the 4th Aeon, that 64% that you get, that one might be a little bit better, especially if you are winding up a little bit to get that full buff as well. 12% HP is not a lot since she does regenerate 5% every time her talent procs. Maybe for some reason you're playing with, maybe eventually if we have like a no sustain team, we could see the one of those days happen eventually if we can get more sustain Lightcones, but those are my thoughts. I will talk about the last one, which is something irreplaceable, because this is a relatively free-to-play Lightcone. The rest are quite whaley because they are quite expensive to get a limited Lightcone. But my thoughts on something irreplaceable at, for example, S1, it gives her good amounts of attack, same as what we like for on the 4th Aeon. And when she is hit by an enemy, destruction characters have generally more than higher average aggro. So she will restore HP when she is hit. And if she defeats an enemy, she also heals, which is good for if she's playing with like a Lynx kind of comp, where Lynx puts the aggro on Xueyi and she's like taking a lot of damage. This could combo quite well with her, in my opinion. And of course, at the same time, her damage is increased by 24% to the end of the turn, which I think combos with a follow-up attack from her talent passive, since it's considered outside of a turn order on a follow-up attack talent passive as well. So this, very interesting to think about, something irreplaceable that you can consider too. So we heard a lot about Lightcones, Relics. Now let's talk about some Eidolons, the key ones that are very, very important. This unit at E0 is not bad already because she does a lot, but with especially Eidolons, she becomes insanely good value. She scales very well later on too. She can have a much more diverse set of roles, as we talked about in our Relic section. Does play into quite a bit of roles too. So first things first, let's talk about E1. Increases damage dealt by a follow-up attack by 40%. This is okay. A bit more damage is always good, but the one that is really, really exciting is her E2, Cliché Breached. Why this is super strong? Her talent follow-up now becomes a colorless breaking effect as well, meaning that if you have a boss, you follow-up attack, you ultimate attack, both of them deal toughness breaking, very fantastic. And she gets this additional sustain for herself, making her play even into teams, for example, with Fucc, and if the enemy deals a lot of damage, at least she can somewhat sustain herself too, with Fucc's slightly lack of sustain, without her signature Lightcone. So that is a very good ability. I think E2 is probably her most important, other than the next one, which I'll talk about in a bit. But first, let's talk about E4. When using ultimate, break effect increases by 40% for 2 turns. This is super nice because she gains damage bonuses based on break effect also, which we'll talk about in her traces. But last but not least, E6 is probably her second best Eidolon out of all. From the 8 stacks, is now reduced to 6. It means that she's working at a, 33% more efficient than before. Depends on how you want to calculate it as well. But this is very, very strong. Max stack of Karma decreases 6. Combined with E2 means she'll be breaking enemies' weaknesses regardless of their element more often as well. Super good value. So TLDR, E2 best, followed by E6. In my opinion, E4 and E1 are roughly around the same for her Eidolons, but those are like some critical ones. But let's look at some of the traces that I want to talk about now real quick. I think the one that is out of all of them that is like the most important one to note is this Clairvoyant Loom, however I'm pronouncing it. Increases your damage dealt by this unit by an amount equal to her break effect, up to a maximum of 240%. This is the absolute reason why building her break effect is a possibility, especially if she's not your main DPS, the typical like crit kind of DPS, because she doesn't lose a lot of value if you scale off break effect. If you're going for a typical crit, you don't want to focus too much on this because you get a lot of damage from crit too. You can always find break effect from subs as well, so you can focus on them there. But this is another example, as we mentioned. You can go for like colorless breaking, break effect kind of build. She still is going to be very, very useful. Other than that, Intrepid Roller Bearings. This one is when the toughness is 50% more than their max toughness, deals more damage. This is okay-ish. Not that urgent, I would say. 10% is nice, but nothing game-breaking. And of course, last but not least, the major traces that we have here is every time that she keeps a tally of karma stacks that exceed the number, For example, if you hit the cap, she will proc the talent and then will gain like a corresponding number of tallied karma stacks thereafter. So it just helps her complete the next rotation much quicker. So very, very nice to have. And just some commentary about overall kit. You see here a lot of break effect here in her kit. So meaning that she gains, this is basically equivalent to like damage bonuses because of this. So break effect plus damage bonus, super efficient character because these are considered as like 2 stat line items. One is like the break effect. The other one, think of this as like damage increased by 5.3%. She gets a lot of this in all of her traces, making her a very strong 4-star character because she's much more efficient than other characters. Having HP 2 in her other traces are not too bad, and quantum damage is always welcome for a DPS character. So very, very strong Eidolons, very efficient character to build. I think a lot of free-to-play players really love this character in totality. But let's talk about some team composition, shall we? Okay, so team compositions for Xueyi. Now I'm going to go a bit more in depth in this one. I think that a mono quantum team probably is what most people will be thinking of. For example, if we are building a team like this, I'm going to just put a placeholder like Zila here. It could be Zila, it could be Xueyi, it could be Qingque. All of these like quantum characters can fill this slot really. But this is probably one of the teams that a lot of you are going for. She works very well with Silver Wolf because Silver Wolf can draw in quantum weaknesses, reducing the enemy's defenses, meaning that she's able to hit them even harder than before. Quantum base, so she pairs very nicely with her. She could even run, for example, Panacony, Land of Dreams, Silver Wolf to buff Xueyi too. Very, very nice combination between the both of them. Xueyi also, I think, works very well with Fucc because one of the biggest downsides of Fucc is if you don't have a signature Lightcone, she can't sustain this entire team very, very well, especially against like enemies that are dealing massive amount of AoE damage. The benefit about Xueyi is she kind of has self-sustain on her own. If with her E2 talent follow-up ability, she can heal like 5% every now and then, which is insanely good in a team that generally was more offensive related. And of course, Zila, you could switch with another quantum character here in this slot, but she does a bit of splash, and Zila has a lot of single target. Qingque has also a bit of splash, a bit of AoE damage in her overall kit, so she pairs nicely with either one of them depending on what characters that you have in your roster. So that's like the first team that I want to talk about for Xueyi, a quantum-based team which any of you want. But now let me share with you like a free-to-play team. I know not everyone has all these characters. This is like super expensive. So let's talk about something that probably most of you would have if you are pulling for her. And that will be a character, for example, like Tingyun, is something that if you are free to play, you'll be pulling this. So a very nice free to play team, tripping on my words here, could be, for example, this tree. You could slot in Natasha, everyone has, free of charge. You can put Xueyi here, you can put Tingyun, play her as like your main DPS to carry you through the majority of the story. And of course, the last slot here, you could play like an AoE DPS, for example, a character like Serval, right here. You can play her for AoE DPS. If you want more single target, you can play like Susang or perhaps like some other character like Dan Heng. It's very, very flexible if you are a free-to-play player, a very early game player as well. So I gave you a bit of team compositions. If you want more detail, you're not satisfied, you want more roster depth, check out this video where we talk more in depth about Qingque or Xueyi teams, sorry. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. We do this for every new character, every single patch. And see you in the next video.